Namaste. This is Swami Ramananda at the Integral Yoga Institute of San Francisco. Hopefully, some of our friends here in San Francisco and from other places in the world can join us through Facebook or through YouTube. This talk was originally planned as a part of our special 50-year anniversary celebration here in San Francisco. But now, given the circumstances, we've had to close the Institute and cancel our celebration, actually postpone it. And the subject matter that I want to address and share with you is dramatically different than what I had originally planned. Before we go on to that, though, let's begin with a chant, just to come together. If you like, you can close your eyes. Let's chant Om 3 times together. And as we do so, feel that we're using that mantra to attune ourselves to a deeper aspect within where we are connected with each other. Inhale. Om. Om. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. We're all faced with some unusual condition that's unprecedented, at least in our lifetime. This pandemic, as it's now called, the spread of the coronavirus, the COVID-something, that's brought us worldwide together in a perhaps terrifying yet somewhat beautiful way, as one poet has written. It doesn't feel like something completely new to me. It feels to me like for some time now we're living in an age characterized by fear, where there are so many different things threatening our security and stability, our personal peace, that it's difficult to escape this undercurrent of fear that I feel has developed. Maybe some years ago, when I was young, we developed fears of credit card theft and cancer and things like that. Now we're facing what Michael Lerner has called the perfect storm of issues that threaten us in various ways. Certainly there's the climate emergency and all of these extreme weather events that have brought various communities to their knees, destroyed homes, left many people homeless, from hurricanes to the bushfires in Australia, the forest fires in California, mudslides, recent flooding in Egypt, on and on it goes. Certain places in the world have become uninhabitable, and more are sure to follow. Right? The very homes that we inhabit are being taken away from us. Another thing that we're witnessing is the rise of interreligious and racial turmoil and conflicts. Of course, this has been going on for many years. But perhaps with the rise of economic polarization, more and more people with maybe a small percentage of people with a great amount of wealth, leaving a greater and greater number of people fighting for what's left, suffering from the way their lives have been squeezed more and more, or the way their country has been affected by the greed of those who have power. Those tensions add to all this tension between peoples, between countries, between races and religions. And all of these factors, both political, economic, and financial, have led to literally millions and millions of people fleeing their countries, becoming refugees, becoming homeless temporarily. The world is inundated with those who seek stability from those who have it. And countries in unprecedented ways are having to make decisions about how to protect their own people, at the same time have compassion for those in need. So these are some of the ways that I see our lives threatened. If we stay in any way tuned in to the news, every day a new event, a use of arms to harm others, a new example of conflict or terrorism. So how do we respond to a world so out of balance in the way that we're witnessing? How do we keep our own balance? How do we maintain some semblance of hope and a feeling that we can make a difference when these worldwide issues are so complex, so overwhelming? That's what I want to talk about. What does yoga have to offer us? How can we respond grounded in our spiritual values in ways that bring benefit and cause no harm, in ways that protect our own communities, yet seek to be mindful of the suffering that's happening globally? We're now no longer limited in our scope of influence, in our identification with a regional community. Our world has become smaller and smaller through technology. Our ability to communicate with each other and have an impact on each other worldwide is greater than it's ever been. So let's look at what yoga teachings have to offer us. The teachings that have been articulated by yoga masters for thousands of years now. I'll share a few thoughts that I've learned from my own yoga master, Sri Swami Satchidananda, and for the others, from my fellow yogis on my own spiritual path. The first thing I want to emphasize is the importance of sustaining our own personal spiritual practice. In a world that's ever changing, conditions that are literally shaking our physical beings, our sense of security, it's so important for us to sustain some regular meditative practice that enables us to attune ourselves and connect to our own personal inner balance, to a source of unchanging peace, a sense of connection. To a natural sense of contentment and a kind of inner ground of being that provides an anchor for us, like a ship needing an anchor in stormy waters in order to remain in position. Any kind of regular, daily meditative practice, and in yoga, a number of practices come to mind. Meditation itself, the very heart of spiritual practice in almost all world traditions. The practice of Hatha Yoga, Asana, Pranayama can be a great precursor to sitting still and quieting the mind. The practice of chanting, devotional practice like puja, a practice of prayer, and a practice of selfless service. But in particular, in harmony with engaging in our world, is the need for us to touch those places of inner peace and stability that give us resilience and enable us to serve in beneficial ways. Many years ago, Sri Swami Satchidananda, I refer to as Gurudev, answered a question I asked in 1976. I remember. I asked about the service I felt called to do in my own hometown. Without describing the question in detail, he responded by reminding me that if I didn't make peace in my own heart first, I'd have a difficult time contributing in a way that didn't create more difficulty, more harm. And that launched me in my own spiritual practice into a regular meditation practice that has served me well, and many of my brothers and sisters as well. So I encourage everyone, in whatever way you know how, in whatever way you've been introduced, to remember the importance of such a spiritual practice done on a daily basis. There are so many messages in our culture that would lead us to believe that spending time sitting still with our eyes closed, or practicing in a prayerful way, or chanting mantras, that would lead us to believe that these practices are unproductive. But they're at the very heart of what enables us to be serviceful, to be productive in a spiritual way, rather than lost in the stream of the productivity and activity that's grounded in greed, in selfishness, in this illusion of separation that our world swims in, the very water that we swim in. So that's one suggestion, is to remember and sustain a regular spiritual practice. And of course, one of the things that helps with that is a Sangha, is a local spiritual community, or even an online community if it's necessary, like it is now. I've just been in touch with Parvati, who directs our center in Milan, Italy, and hearing her talk about how they're all isolated in their own homes. They're all advised not to even go out, not to travel. Right? Reminds us that we need to think of Sangha, of community, in a new way. But Sangha, or spiritual community, is meant to be maintaining a connection with like-minded seekers who share the same spiritual values, as a way of supporting each other to maintain a practice, support each other in processing, in understanding and coping with the stressors that we're facing. I'm blessed to live in an institute here in San Francisco where, with my 8 other residents, we're able to practice together regularly. And just that support of others who I know will show up for practice goes a long way towards encouraging me and sustaining my regularity. So I pray this for all of you, for all of us. Another thing I want to talk about is how even a small foothold in that underlying ground of being, that spiritual stability, even a small connection to that enables us to be more mindful, enables us to acknowledge and respond to our own suffering, our own emotional reactions to the difficulties we're facing. I spoke a little bit ago about how this age of fear that we live in, I believe, creates a kind of undercurrent of anxiety that has become so familiar to us we may not even realize it. Right? But that anxiety in stressful times like this, right, when the fear is heightened, when our lives are further threatened by life-threatening illness, right, by circumstances that put us in competition with each other for the same items on the grocery shelf, right? This kind of heightened stress pushes that anxiety, that low-grade anxiety, into many kinds of compulsive behaviors that can be harmful. For example, what I would call panic shopping, right? A friend told me yesterday that she was unable to even get in the store. The lines of people leading out onto the sidewalk. I've seen pictures of whole shelf areas within food stores and pharmacies, bare with nothing left. Another form of, or another manifestation of this anxiety. Emotional eating, a constant preoccupation with information, looking from one device to another, constantly checking the news, constantly communicating, distracted by all the messages that are coming from all over with another update. Exposing our minds over and over again to the same messages, to the same precautions, can just sustain in the mind this condition of fear and can provoke a lot of compulsive behavior that may be harmful to us and others. We might find ourselves lost in this kind of anxious, preoccupied condition, irritable with those around us, frustrated with losing control over our lives, even angry at those that we have to interact with, needing someone to blame for our discomfort and our suffering. We may experience a loss of hope or a sense of depression. We may be grieving for those who are suffering and losing their lives to this pandemic. I think there's a whole spectrum of emotion that's likely to arise and move through us. But that's why I talk about what I would call even a small foothold of inner stability, of balance, that can enable us to sustain a non-reactive awareness where we're aware of what's happening, the conditions around us, the emotional responses within us, without being completely lost in them, without being swept away, if you will. And being aware of them doesn't mean that they're any less powerful, but it means that we can consciously choose how to be with them. We can be with our own disturbed or upset feelings in mindful ways. We can be a big sister or brother to our own suffering minds. We can support each other to allow these emotions to arise and move through us, to release the energies of these feelings that are meant to move. Right? The way a child or even an animal naturally shakes with fear or cries with grief without holding back, without holding it in like a psychic knot that's tied inside of us. That becomes an important practice for us if we're to be at all useful in the world, to handle our own emotional upset in a healthy way, to support each other in doing so without judgment of each other. Namaste. Thank you for listening. I hope what I've shared has been useful. Tune in again to hear more of the teachings that I can share with you. Loka samasta Sukhino bhavantu. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light.